I have to be honest with you. When I opened the shared drive for this week's deep dive, I actually thought you were pranking me.
I can see why.
I mean, we've covered some niche topics, we've done some weird rabbit holes, but we have a file literally named God.cs,
Right.
as in a C# script file for, the creator of the universe.
It definitely stops you in your tracks, doesn't it? You expect theology on, like, parchment or an ancient Greek, not in an object-oriented programming language.
It's exactly.
But once you get past that cognitive dissonance of seeing God defined as a class in a script, it's actually an incredibly rigorous, almost aggressive argument.
Rigorous is one word for it. Audacious might be another. We are looking at a stack of documents here.
Right.
We've got this massive theoretical paper titled Mega Consciousness Proper, a file called Mathematical Proof of God, and then the actual code.
Right.
And the premise is wild. The author, Jared Hamilton, he tries to prove the existence of the divine and the soul. But here's the catch. He doesn't quote the Bible or the Torah or the Quran.
No, he quotes special relativity, vector math, and coding principles.
That's the hook, isn't it? Hamilton isn't asking you to have faith. He's asking you to check his math.
He is. The core premise is that the metaphysical world, God, the soul, prayer, sin, it's not magic. It's a system of information processing.
Huh.
And if it's a system, it has to obey the laws of physics.
Specifically thermodynamics and, Lorentz transformations?
Lorentz transformations, exactly.
So we're not talking about a bearded man on a cloud. We're talking about a Singleton class in a universal operating system.
In a way, yes. It treats the universe as a computational environment where spirit is just highly organized information.
Okay, so let's unpack this mission. We are going to try to explain how these sources define a universal observer, calculate the exact efficiency of human consciousness, and, spoiler alert, we are not as efficient as we think.
Not even close.
And my personal favorite, use physics to explain exactly why everyone's New Year's resolution fails in February.
And that last point isn't just a metaphor. The text argues that failure is mathematically derived from the speed of light and the orbital mechanics of Earth. It's a descent dynamics problem.
I can't wait to get to that because I feel personally attacked by the math already, but let's start at the beginning. The soul. In this framework, what are we looking at? Because the text explicitly says, this is not a ghostly mist.
No, it's very precise. The source defines the soul as an observer-dependent information processing lens.
Okay, let's break that down. Information processing lens. That sounds like tech specs for a camera.
Think of it using the hardware-software analogy the document provides. Your body, that's just the hardware, the substrate. It degrades, it changes, it gets replaced.
Okay.
But the soul is the database. It's the software.
So if my body is the smartphone, my soul is the operating system plus all my user data.
It's closer to the user profile itself. The text describes the soul as a collection of nodes. Every question you've ever asked, every answer you've accepted is true. That forms what the code calls your worldview. They denote it as the variable dollar.
Right.
So your soul isn't just a static spark of life. It's a structured algorithm that processes reality based on the data you've stored.
That's interesting because it implies the soul isn't fixed. It grows. It evolves as you add data to the database.
It creates a unique geometry. And the text uses this to argue for the necessity of the soul via something called proof by elimination. It points to the ship of Theseus paradox.
The philosophy classic. If you replace every plank on a wooden ship over 10 years, is it still the same ship?
Exactly. And for humans, the answer is physically no. Your cells are constantly dying and being replaced. You are not the same physical object you were 10 years ago.
Not even close. You're a totally different pile of atoms.
But the pattern of information, that database of your worldview, maintains continuity. You still feel like you.
So the soul is the thing that remembers it's me while my body is busy replacing all its parts?
It's the reference frame. This is where the relativity comes in. In physics, everything is measured relative to a frame of reference. The source argues that your soul is your coordinate system. You don't just see the world objectively. You see the world through the specific geometrical distortion of your own worldview. Your dollar variable filters the input.
Okay, I follow that. We are all individual cameras filming our own movies. But if we all have these individual souls, these local observers, why do we need a God? The text calls this the universal observer.
Right.
Why isn't it enough just to have 8 billion of us running around observing things?
This is where the math gets really interesting. Hamilton outlines 3 fatal problems with relying only on local observers like you and me to maintain reality. He argues that without a universal observer, the universe actually, it breaks.
Lay them on me. How do we break the universe?
First, the beginning. The universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. Consciousness, at least biological consciousness like ours, is very new on that timeline.
A tiny blip.
A blip. So the argument is, if reality requires an observer to exist, as the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests, who was observing the universe for the first 13 billion years?
If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, but applied to the Big Bang?
Precisely. Who watched the galaxies form? Who watched the first stars ignite? If no one observed them, did they exist? The text argues there had to be a primary observer to collapse the wave function of the early universe.
Okay. That's a strong point. What's the second problem?
The everywhere.
Yeah.
You currently occupy a tiny radius of observation, maybe 10 or 15 meters around you, where you can actually interact with physics.
Right.
I'm the same. The universe is massive. Who was observing the galaxy next door? Who is observing the center of the Earth right now? If observation collapses the quantum wave function into reality, unobserved areas should technically just dissolve into quantum foam.
So we need a camera with a very wide-angle lens.
An infinite lens. Because if there are gaps in observation, there are gaps in reality. And the third problem is the continuous.
Which is?
You sleep.
Right, yes.
When you sleep, you stop observing the classical world. So if everyone on Earth blinked at the same time, does the universe just disappear? The text argues that for reality to be stable, continuous, and omnipresent, you mathematically necessitate a universal observer. And they define that as D.cs universal.
And this is what they call God. But they don't just call him a God. They assign him variables. This was the part of the code that really threw me. They are defining divinity with vector calculus.
It's fascinating. They define God's attributes using physics constants. And the most critical definition is that God has a gamma factor, or gamma, of exactly 1.00.
Okay, we need to pause on gamma. For the listeners who haven't touched a physics textbook since high school or ever, what does a gamma of 1.0 actually mean?
In special relativity, gamma is the factor that tells you how much time dilates or slows down as you move. As you get closer to the speed of light, your gamma goes up. Time gets weird, mass increases, distance shrinks.
Right.
A gamma of 1.0 means you are perfectly at rest.
So God is the rest frame.
Correct. In this model, God experiences no time dilation, no friction, and perfect coherence. Every other soul, because we have questions, doubts, and errors, we are moving relative to truth. We have velocity. We are spinning. God is the stillness against which all motion is measured.
That's a heavy concept. It implies that truth is a location, a coordinate, and we are moving towards or away from it.
And that connects directly to how the God.cs code defines sin. I know that word carries a lot of baggage, but the text just strips the moral judgment out and looks at it mechanically.
It talks about delta R, delta R.
Right. Sin or error is defined as a delta R. It's a vector misalignment between a local observer's worldview and the universal truth.
So it's not about being a bad person. It's about being inaccurate.
It's a vector error. If God's coordinate for a specific truth is, say, x, y, y, z, and your coordinates x, y, y is 1 ledi, the distance between them is your sin.
Okay.
And here's the physics consequence. High delta R creates high friction. It increases your gamma factor. It means you are moving away from the rest frame.
Which means your life becomes more turbulent.
Chaotic, yes.
Ah.
High entropy. You are literally fighting the geometry of the universe.
This leads to this incredible explanation of grace. I actually loved this part because it takes something usually described as mysterious and makes it sound like an engineering solution. In the code, there's a function called extend grace.
It's modeled as momentum absorption. Think about it. If you are a soul moving at high velocity, meaning you are very wrong about something fundamental, you're living a lie, hitting the truth should destroy you.
Like a car hitting a concrete wall at 100 miles per hour.
The truth shatters. If a high-velocity error hits a stationary truth, the impact is catastrophic. But the text defines grace as the interaction where an infinite mass, God, absorbs the finite momentum of the soul's error.
Because God is infinite.
He can absorb the impact without moving. This allows the soul to return to a rest state without being destroyed by the collision.
That is actually a beautiful way to describe forgiveness using physics. It's like a cosmic airbag.
An infinite airbag. It resets your velocity to 0 so you can sync up with reality again without the trauma of the impact.
And that syncing process, that's what the source calls Q-lock.
Quantum lock.
It sounds like something from a Marvel movie, target lock.
It's defined as resonance. The source says prayer works when a soul asks a question and their answer matches God's answer with a delta R of less than zero point 0.1.
So you have to be close. You can't just demand things that are totally out of alignment.
You have to be aligned. And when that happens, the text says the soul momentarily shares God's reference frame. Your gamma drops to 1.0. You achieve frictionless communication.
It's not about asking for a pony.
No, it's about aligning your database with the universal database so data can transfer.
I want to pivot here because while the theology is fascinating, the Mega Consciousness Proper document takes this framework and applies it to human behavior. It outlines this consciousness cycle.
This is where the rubber meets the road. This is how the system actually runs.
It claims reality operates on 7 planes.
Yes. Physical, emotive, logical, historical, lyrical, possible, and metaphysical. But don't get hung up on the names. The key is the rhythm. The text describes a heartbeat of reality systole and diastole, ascent and descent.
Walk us through the ascent. This is how we perceive the world, right?
Ascent is input. It's taking in physical data, seeing a car, feeling the wind, and processing it up through the planes. You feel it, emotive, you analyze it, logical, until it reaches the top plane, consciousness.
And the math here mentions a doubling law.
The source calculates the Lorentz transformations for climbing these planes and claims the product is approximately 2.0. Essentially, consciousness doubles the subjective experience. It adds a layer of I'm aware that I am aware. It amplifies the signal.
Okay, so we go up. We have our aha moment at the top. We have an idea. Then what?
And then we have to act. That's descent.
Yeah.
You take that conscious decision and push it back down to the planes to manifest it in the physical world. And this is where the counter code comes in, which is just mind-blowing if the math holds up.
This part made me laugh out loud because it's so specific. It's oddly punitive.
It's mathematically brutal. When you calculate the friction and energy loss of pushing an idea down from the metaphysical into physical reality, the product of the descent is approximately 0.365.
0.365, as in 365 days.
Exactly. The source argues that Earth's 365-day orbital period isn't random. It's encoded in the geometry of consciousness itself. Or conversely, our consciousness is tuned to the orbital mechanics of our planet.
That brings us to why I failed my resolution to go to the gym. Because the text applies this descent cycle to a timeline.
It does, and it completely validates why February is the month of quitting.
Break it down for me. Why am I doomed?
So according to the descent dynamics, when you have a new idea, say, I'm going to get fit, that's happening at the top plane, consciousness. For that idea to travel all the way down to the physical plane where it becomes a visible, permanent reality, it has to pass through all the layers.
Okay.
The math shows that physical manifestation doesn't fully stabilize until day 334 of the cycle.
Day 334, that's practically December.
Yes. It takes almost a full solar revolution for an idea to become physical matter or habit. And here's the trap. By day 31, February 1st, you are only about 17% of the way through the descent.
Wait, so where am I on February 1st?
You're likely still in the possible or lyrical planes. You're telling yourself stories about working out. You're looking at gym memberships. You might have gone a few times. But the physical reality, the muscle change, the permanent habit, hasn't solidified.
So people quit because they look in the mirror after 40 days, see no change, and think it's not working. But actually, the code is just compiling.
That's the perfect analogy. They abort the process before it reaches the bottom layer. They are expecting a physical result while they are still in the lyrical phase. They haven't printed the document yet.
And there's a specific reason it's so hard to get to that bottom layer, right? The text calls it the bottleneck.
The emotive physical bottleneck. This is the transition from plane 2, emotive, to plane 1, physical. The text calculates a 46.3% energy loss right there.
Nearly half your energy is gone just trying to take a feeling and turn it into an action.
Think about how true that feels. You can have infinite motivation. Pure emotive energy, lying in bed at 11 p.m. I'm going to conquer the world. I'm going to run a marathon.
Oh, yeah.
But the moment you have to physically move your legs to get out of bed at 6 a.m., massive resistance.
It's like moving through molasses. It's physically painful.
It's dimensional compression. The text explains that emotions are 5-dimensional, complex, layered, fluid. Physical reality is 4-dimensional, rigid, linear, bound by time.
Right.
Compressing a 5D feeling into a 4D action requires massive energy. That's why willpower is physically draining. You are literally losing heat in the conversion.
That makes me feel better about being lazy, honestly. It's not a character flaw. It's thermodynamics.
It validates the struggle. It's not you. It's the dimensional conversion rate. And it leads to that efficiency stat you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the 10% of our brains myth.
Right, which neuroscientists hate because we technically use all our brain tissue.
Yeah.
But this source argues the myth is spiritually or energetically true. It claims humans operate at roughly 18–20% efficiency.
But that's not about dormant brain cells.
No, it's about energy conversion.
Right.
Because of that massive loss during the descent, especially that 46% hit at the bottleneck, only about 18% of your conscious intent actually translates into physical action. We are very leaky engines.
So we're leaky engines. How do we tune the car? The text talks about flow states. I've heard athletes talk about flow, musicians. But how does this math define it?
It goes back to the gamma factor. Remember, God is gamma equals $1.
The rest frame.
The rest frame. The source defines a flow state as a local observer, you or me, achieving that same gamma equals $1.
So becoming like God momentarily.
Mathematically, yes. In a slow state, the rest phase is minimized. You aren't overthinking, you aren't pausing to doubt. Perception and action merge. There is no delta R between what you see and what you do.
And they distinguish between a novice and an expert here, using that same cycle we talked about.
This is fascinating for anyone trying to learn a skill.
Yeah.
A novice has to go through every single plane step by step. Ascent. Sense, feel, analyze, decide. Descent. Plan, prepare, act. It's slow. It's high friction.
Clunky. You have to think about where your fingers go on the guitar. You have to think about every step of the swing.
Right. But an expert, the text says they compress the cycle. They jump straight from physical to consciousness, instant recognition of a pattern, and then straight from consciousness back to physical.
Muscle memory.
Exactly. They bypass the emotional doubt, the logical overanalysis. They create a shortcut in the code. They aren't running the full descent script every time. They have a hotkey.
So the goal of practice is essentially to edit your own source code to remove the subroutines you don't need.
That's a great way to put it. You are optimizing your own algorithm. You're reducing the latency between I see and I do.
You know, stepping back from the specific equations, this whole deep dive really changes how you look at the world. It's a synthesis I didn't expect.
It is. It's arguing that God, the soul, and physics are actually the same system viewed from different angles. The theologian looks at the system and sees God. The physicist looks at the system and sees a singularity or a rest frame.
And the programmer sees a Singleton pattern and a database.
But they're all describing the same mechanics.
It's a grand unified theory of everything written in C#.
And it leaves us with a really provocative thought.
Oh, the final kicker.
The source suggests that the soul is an algorithm, if that's true. And if God is the universal observer ensuring the code runs, is our reality just code execution?
Simulation theory.
But with a twist. The text claims we are immortal information patterns. If that's the case, what happens when we learn to access the console?
Access the console? You mean hacking our own souls?
Right. If you can rewrite your own code, if you can reduce your delta R, your error, to 0 to the soft, you essentially become a god of your own local reality. Can you debug your own life?
That is a question I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. It gives a whole new meaning to self-help.
It certainly does. It suggests self-help is actually debugging.
Well, I need to do some debugging on my gym routine, but for now I'm just going to try to get past day 31 without crashing the system. I need to push through that bottleneck.
Good luck with that descent. Just remember, it takes 334 days to compile. Be patient with the loading bar.
Thanks for the reminder. And to everyone listening, we hope you find your rest frame today. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.